All right, and we're live. So, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our first dental student informational session with WebSef S. Today, we're joined by Ethan Nguyen, a D1 student currently attending the University of the Pacific School of Dentistry. So, Ethan will talk about his journey to dental school and share some words of wisdom for the pre-dents. So, thank you so much for joining us, Ethan. And whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, everyone. As you said earlier, my name is Ethan Nguyen. I'm currently a D1 at UOP Dugoni School of Dentistry, and I'm currently in my fourth week of dental school now, so we're just getting used to it a little bit. Just some background information on me. I attended UOP for undergrad as well in Stockton, California. I graduated there in May 2021, and UOP's dental school started in July 2021, so I had a 2-month break. Um, but yeah, before that, I'm from San Jose, California, from the Bay Area. So Dugoni's in San Francisco, not too far from there. So I've been in the Bay Area for almost my entire life. In regards to my pre-dental journey, I know it takes on a different form for many different people. I feel like mine is a little bit non-traditional in a way, um, but I'll still try to make it a relatable experience. So for me, my journey kind of started in high school. When I was deciding which career I wanted to kind of pursue, I knew I just wanted to be something in healthcare just because a lot of my um, relatives in my family, they're also involved in the healthcare field, not just dentistry, there's also medicine, optometry, pharmacy, and various things like that. So it was something that I knew that I was potentially interested in as well. So originally in high school, I want to say around my junior year, I was actually on a pre-med track. So this took on the form of me volunteering at my local hospital, just serving on the board of pre-medical student associations at my school as well. Um, and through volunteering at the hospital, I really enjoyed it actually. My job was to discharge patients. So what I would do is I would just take them out from their rooms, um, and just discharge them. They'd all be very happy to be leaving the hospital, obviously. And just forming those connections with them was something that I really cherished. But in that same time as well, we had some health complications in our family. So I also got to see kind of the negative aspects of medicine. Not everyone gets to go home and have like a happy ending and things like that. Um, and that's just the unfortunate reality of medicine is that while you do have those good moments, you also have those kind of sadder moments that kind of balance it out. And I knew that I couldn't surround myself in an environment like that every day. I felt like it was going to be really taxing on me. So I decided to pursue something else. So at the same time, I was involved in my pre-medical student association in my high school. And we had a career fair, and this is when I spoke to a dentist. I have a lot of dentists in my family, about, I want to say, 6 or 7 of them. So dentistry was always in the back of my head, but I never really considered it until this interaction. He really encouraged me to start shadowing at a young age just to make sure that this was something that I really wanted to do. So I took his advice and started shadowing one of my general dentists. And just observing her work, I really kind of gained an interest in the profession. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to pursue. So when it came time to apply to undergrad for colleges, I applied as a biology major to many schools. I also applied to some combined um, dental programs just because I know that the road to dentistry is around 8 years from the start. So that seems like a really long time. So I wanted to get to be able to be a practicing dentist as soon as I could. So one school that I applied to was University of the Pacific because they have an accelerated dental program, um, and they offer different tracks. You can finish undergrad in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, um, and you can also just move on to the dental school. That's also 3 years long, given that you meet a bunch of the requirements. So I applied. Um, I wasn't really sure if I was going to get in because my dental experience, even though I did shadow, was at this time still kind of concentrated towards the pre-med track. Um, but I applied and eventually I ended up getting accepted. And I was really happy about that because I knew that this was probably one of the easiest ways that I could become a dentist. So we started in undergrad. And at first I thought it was going to be pretty easy. I didn't think UP was a really small school. I didn't think it was going to be too challenging or anything like that. But then once we got started, I realized that, oh, we're condensing 4 years into 3 years. It's a lot more work than I thought. So freshman year starts off with like general bio, general chem. Um, I'm personally not that strong in chemistry, so I kind of struggled at first, but eventually got the hang of it. And as I went on throughout my undergrad, we started taking other upper division science courses such as anatomy, histology, physiology, etc. Um, so throughout this time as well, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to get burnt out and just focus on academics, I guess. So I got involved in different organizations that were on campus. We had different clubs like pre-dental society. It was really good getting to know other pre-dental students and kind of having that supportive network on campus. And in regards to the social aspect, I joined a professional fraternity. It was for pre-health students as well. So also being in a larger network that isn't just exclusive to dentistry and also encompasses other healthcare fields is something that was really interesting to me. Um, so those two in conjunction kind of helped me throughout my time in undergrad stay balanced. And it made 3 years fly by very quickly. Honestly, it didn't feel like I did. I felt like I got everything done in 3 years that I wanted to do. So that was really good. So during this time as well, after I want to say my sophomore year of, no, before this, after my freshman year of college, because we are in 3 years, we have to take a lot of summer classes just to be able to, you know, um, graduate on time within those 3 years. So I took organic chemistry at UC Santa Cruz. It's a different school than UOP after my freshman year. And it was during the summer. It was condensed, it was 10 weeks long. And it was a grind, but I'm glad I did it over the summer just because I could get a harder class out of the way and just devote all my time to that class. So the winter break of my sophomore year of undergrad, I also decided to take the DAT. A lot of people take it in their summer break. However, I didn't want to risk everything and just put in one shot into the DAT just in case, worst case scenario, I didn't meet the minimum contract or could get a high enough score for my dental school. So I decided to study and take the DAT in winter break, which is approximately 3 weeks long. It was definitely a very tough time. I was in the library from opening till closing every day. And then when I went home, I'd still be studying. But after 2 weeks, I took the test and then I got the score that I wanted. I was really happy about it. And from there on, I just finished up the rest of like the science series at school. I took other upper division classes like biochem, genetics, and other things like that. So once I had all these class requirements out of the way, as well as the DAT, I still shadowed during this time as well. That was really helpful. I would accumulate numerous hours and kind of just strengthen my application throughout this whole thing. And it was the summer when COVID first started. It was the summer after my sophomore year when I started applying for dental schools. Now, even though I did have a kind of like a guaranteed interview with Dugoni, given that I met the minimum DAT and GPA requirements for my program, I just hear stories of people in my class sometimes not being able to matriculate in dental school just because the class fills up or just because maybe they didn't perform as well in their interview. So that made me kind of nervous, even though I had a very likely chance of getting in. Something could still always go wrong. So I applied to other schools other than Dugoni. I applied to 7 schools total. Most of them were in California, but I also applied to a few out-of-state schools, some on the East Coast. And yeah, and when this was all happening, one useful resource that I found was that a bunch of people from my pre-dental society, that have taken and finished the application a year before me, they were very helpful. The application's a little bit confusing to navigate, but they helped me walk through it and everything like that. And when it came time to submit my application, I found that it was a pretty well-rounded application. I was really proud of my personal statement as well as all the activities I mentioned. And then we had to play the waiting game. I submitted, I want to say in mid-July, and I didn't receive my first interview until November. So that few month stretch was really nerve-wracking, just sitting every day checking my email. But eventually it'll come through. In the end, I ended up being able to get 4 interviews to the 7 schools I applied to. I was really happy about that. At the very end, I decided to choose Dugoni, just because, like I said, it was the quickest way to becoming a dentist. And also, I know I want to stay in California. UOP's rep here is really big, and I really like the people at this school as well as their curriculum. So that was something that really interested me. And now that I'm at Dugoni, I want to say it's definitely been definitely been a tough transition, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to doing. Um, it's a tough transition in regard to the fact that, in undergrad, you're really only taking science courses, and balancing other clubs and activities that you have with it. But in dental school, you have to balance all your science courses as well as your hand skills and like different projects that you're going to have to do in the lab. So a typical day for me at Dugoni looks like waking up at 6 to get to class at 8. So in the morning, I like to prep, have things ready. We start school at 8. Each lecture is 50 minutes, and we have a 10-minute break in between. But we're in class most days from 8 till 5. So you can imagine that's a lot of lectures throughout the day. It's hard to stay focused. Some are 2 hours as well. Um, and then after that's over, you have to go up to sim lab and then finish some of the projects you have, whether it's prepping some teeth, performing wax ups, things like that. It's very draining. It's definitely teaching me a lot about time management, though. Um, and what's important, I guess, is still that you still have time to take time for yourself and really relax. Don't let school, even though it is very important, don't let it, I'd say, consume your life. Um, you're gonna have plenty of time for that in the next 3 years. So I'd say just take it as easy as you can. Just know that like taking time for yourself isn't wasted time. It's actually very necessary to keep going. Um, but yeah, we just finished week 3 of dental school. It's definitely been a grind so far. This past week, we had three quizzes as well as one mock practical. Um, so it was a really long week, but uh, I just know that that's the beginning of it, and it'll become a lot more from there. But I'm looking forward to taking on that challenge. But yeah, that's kind of all I have right now.
Thank you, Ethan, for that. That was amazing. So we do have some questions if you don't mind answering them.
Mm.
So you basically touch upon this, but how did you decide on specifically dentistry?
So I knew I wanted to go into dentistry just because, well, for me, it was between medicine and dentistry, at least in high school. So I knew I wanted to do dentistry just because I felt as though after shadowing, I really like talking to people, new people. So being able to form those interactions with my patients and just watching the dentist that I shadowed be able to do that, something that I found really intriguing. And also, I'm a pretty artistic person, I want to say. I really like using my hands, getting to just do random projects and things like that. So being able to use that in dentistry is something that's pretty cool to me. I'm really big on photography, graphic design. I feel like they kind of require the same mindset, the same skill set as well as a dentist. And the fact that a lot of my relatives are in the dental field is probably a big factor as well. I've grown up, they've been speaking about it for a bit. Um, it wasn't until high school that I actually really took their words to heart and kind of just considered what they were talking about. And after that, I kind of knew that dentistry was a good fit for me.
That's awesome. So you briefly mentioned shadowing. So how many hours in total did you shadow in undergrad?
So I shadowed around 200 hours in undergrad. Um, I started shadowing my winter break of my freshman year, just because, that was a pretty long time. We didn't have much to do at the time. So I decided to shadow my general dentist. I also looked into different specialties as well. Um, each school has, a minimum number of hours that they require. But obviously it's a lot better to surpass that in any way you can. So when COVID hit, I had hit I had already surpassed the minimum for a lot of the dental schools, but um, it's a lot harder obviously to shadow during COVID because a lot of you want to minimize how many people are in the office at once, and you can't really start seeing new dentists just because it's just a lot more difficult during COVID. So I was lucky enough to have some relatives in dentistry um, that helped me. They allowed me to come in and shadow them during the pandemic, which is really cool because you can kind of compare it to pre-pandemic versus like during the pandemic as well. Just seeing the changes in the dental office is something that I was really interested in too. Um, but I shadowed around 200 hours. Obviously, it depends on the person. A lot of people have much less, much more. But I feel as though if you really take something away from shadowing, I feel like then that's really worth it.
So then how should pre-dental students go about asking dentists for shadowing opportunities?
So what I did first is I, since I have a bunch of relatives in dentistry, I kind of had not many connections, but my mom's a dentist. She went to Dugoni as well. She was able to tell me, oh, like you should shadowing at this dentist. He's really cool. He does this is the work that he does. If it interests you, like let me know. Um, but then she would just give me his information, and I would send them kind of like a formal email. I'd be like, oh, my name's Ethan. I'm a pre-dental student. I'm applying to dental school right now. I hear about the work you do, and it's something that really interests me. And most of the time, they'll be willing to say yes because they have to shadow as well. They've been in your shoes before. They know kind of how difficult it can be. But if you don't have anything like that, I would say honestly, just start by asking your general dentist or your orthodontist or something like that. 9 times out of 10, they'll probably say yes to you if you just explain to them how you're a pre-dental student and you need a shadow as well. If anything, they'd be more than happy to teach you the ropes, kind of show you their day-to-day life. So yeah, I would say just start by doing research, maybe seeing what work of theirs interests you, and then building off from there.
Thank you. And would you say that the UOP 3-year dental track is more vigorous and competitive compared to other programs?
I want to say for undergrad, we were doing a lot more. Like it was pretty academic heavy. I'd be compressing a lot of my work into the summer. So while a bunch of my other friends that are pre-dental slash pre-med took traditional 4-year courses, they could really enjoy their summers. They had more time to do things, but since we were condensed into 3 years, it was definitely a lot more packed in. Almost all my summers, I took at least one class. But in terms of dental school, I feel as though it's definitely more compact, and I want to say a little bit more stressful. Um, just because on Instagram, I get to see all other D1s post about their dental journeys and things like that. And we're already doing things that some of my friends that are second years at other schools have asked me, like, oh, you already get to start doing this. That's crazy. Because the thing about Dugoni is that it's 3 years, and you start seeing patients your second year. So this whole first year, they're trying to introduce us to a bunch of skills that we're going to need when we start seeing patients. And they want us to be really good at it as well. So I've been in school for less than a month now, and they've already made us do a bunch of hands-on work that typical dental students don't get to do for a while. So I would say it definitely is a lot more condensed and more vigorous. But again, they're compressing a 4-year curriculum into 3. So this is kind of what you should expect, I guess.
Thank you. Do you think students who come in without any AP credits can still be successful in the 3-year undergraduate track at UOP?
Yes, I think it's definitely possible for me. So I only transferred in 4 AP credits. Most of my friends transferred in around 20 to 30. So I was already at a disadvantage going into that. But most of my AP classes were in my senior year of high school. And by then, like senioritis had really hit me. So I didn't try too hard as I would have liked to. Because of that, not many of my units transferred in. But it's definitely still possible. I graduated in 3 years, and I actually had a few extra units at the end of it. It will require more work, though. You're going to have to take the maximum units, I guess, at the very beginning at least. And over the summers as well, I took a bunch of GE courses that I didn't get credit for. So the summer after my freshman year of undergrad, I took organic chemistry, and that started in early July. So right when I got out of school, I enrolled in 2 GE courses at my local community college. It was anthropology and psychology, just to get those units out of the way. So in total that summer, um, I took around 14 to 16 units. And that's really helpful just because the thing about, I don't know how it is for other schools, but at least at UOP, when you register for classes, they kind of go based off your standing. So that means that, a senior obviously has a lot more units than a freshman would. And because of that, they get priority when they need to choose their classes because obviously they have to graduate soon. So the only disadvantage I'd say was that the fact that since I had such a low number of units, my registration time was a lot later than everyone else in my friend group. And because of that, they were able to get the core classes that they needed. Like, for example, one really sought after class in undergrad is called histology. There's only 25 or 28 spots. So obviously, all of the people that have more credits can get that pretty easily. But for me, since I didn't have as many units, I'd have a later registration time. I'd still end up getting those classes though, but it's a lot more stressful just because you don't know if your spot's going to be taken. You're on the wait list for some classes. Eventually, you do get off, but it's definitely doable as long as you kind of take more summer classes. I want to say it will eventually balance out. And what's really helpful is that at UOP they help us make a 4-year plan or a 3-year plan, and you insert how many units you're taking per semester, which courses you're taking, and at the end it shows you what the number of units should come out to. So it's really helpful, but no, it's definitely fine if you don't have many or even any AP credits. It'll just be a little bit more work for you. But yeah.
Our next question is, what kind of questions do the admissions people ask in dental school interviews?
So it varies from school to school. But I want to say a few questions that repeated itself in all of my interviews. The first one is kind of why dentistry. So just talking about your journey from kind of what I just did, talking about your pre-dental journey from your high school days all the way until, when you decide to apply. A lot of dental schools too like to peg ethical dilemmas on you just to see how, you can think of in the spot, and how you work as a dental student. So a common one for me I got asked is, you see your friend cheating on an exam, what do you do? So kind of just practicing questions like that, but not rehearsing it to the point where it just becomes like robotic. Just think of what you would genuinely do, kind of running it off, bouncing it off one of your friends is something that I found really helpful. But it honestly differs from school to school. So one school for me, UOP, the interview was very chill. We talked about dentistry for it was an hour-long interview. We talked about dentistry for 10 minutes. And the remainder of the time, it was genuinely just a conversation. We talked about traveling, tennis, photography, things like that. It was very conversational. But other schools, some of them were a lot more, I want to say, more thorough of my application. They'd ask me why dentistry, why our school, describe a leadership experience. Where do you see yourself in a few years and things like that. So there's a lot of resources online that I found to be pretty helpful. Various schools, pre-dental societies, or different clubs will have sample interview questions for you to run through. So I found to be pretty helpful during my time was, I'd print out these questions, give them to a friend that I knew that would be pretty honest with me, not just telling me what I want to hear, and just running my answers off with them. And they'd really give me their feedback, which I found to be pretty helpful. And kind of just practicing the questions pretty often, whenever I got the chance, even if I was like driving somewhere by myself, I would just try to rehearse an answer in my head and just say it out loud. And I find that when you do that, you really get to see like, okay, this is a weak point in my answer, this is a strong point in my answer. Kind of just playing off that. It's really helpful.
So you also briefly mentioned this before, but what other dental schools did you apply to and why did you apply to those schools?
Okay, so I applied to 7 schools total. I applied to UOP, USC, UCLA, ASDO, which is in Arizona, NYU, Tufts, and Roseman. So the schools I applied to in California were just because I wanted to stay in California. I know that they're pretty strong clinically, and that's something that I really wanted to be good at when I got out of school. And my stats were a little bit on the lower side, so I was a little bit nervous about applying to some schools. But then I saw kind of their breakdown. If you go on all these schools' websites, they have their average DAT acceptance, average GPA acceptance. So it's kind of like applying to undergrad. I categorize things that were like reach schools for me, target schools, and safety schools. There's no such thing as a safety dental school. They're all very hard to get into. But I have a lot of relatives that went to some of these schools as well. So just hearing them really talk about it kind of helped me out. But I applied to other schools too, just because I kind of wanted to get an experience outside of the Bay Area, I guess. So that's why I applied to a lot of the East Coast schools. I also looked into their program a lot, just seeing the different initiatives and different programs they have there. They seem really appealing to me as well. But yeah, that's how I kind of chose the schools that I wanted to apply to.
So then shifting gears to DAT, what course did you use to prepare for the exam?
So the main course that I used to prepare was DAT Bootcamp. It's the course that most dental students use. Um, it's pretty helpful though. What it is essentially it's on your computer. It's a program you log into, and they have different practice sections. So for all the sections on the DAT, you know, they have different videos and different notes that you have to watch, and they're really helpful too. And they have like review questions embedded within them. So just doing those over and over again really helped me out. They have 10 practice tests for you to do as well. I highly recommend doing all of those just because those are the type of questions that will appear in your test. So just being able to know, okay, I'm strong at this, I'm pretty weak at this is really helpful for you. So just doing that. A bunch of my friends, I also use it as well as DAT Destroyer. Those questions, as well as DAT Bootcamp questions, are supposedly a lot harder than the real DAT. I can confirm that. I scored higher on the real test than I did when I took those practice tests. The thing about DAT Destroyer, the book though, is that they don't have any tutorials for you to walk through like DAT Bootcamp does. It's just it's just the questions, the answers, and the very back, they have like the rationale for each of these questions as well. So those are the two main courses I use. I know other people use PAT Booster, different online generators. Those are helpful as well. But I'd say, honestly, the main thing you probably need is just DAT Bootcamp. It does a really great job of preparing you for the test. And it really helped me out when I was preparing for this.
So when did you take the exam and how long did you prepare for?
So I took my test on, let me pull this up actually. I took my test on January 10th, 2020. And I started preparing for it on, oh no, sorry, my bad. I took the test on January 10th, 2020 actually. I'm going through my calendar right now. Oh yeah, I took the test on January 10th, 2020, and I started studying for this exam on December 15th, 2019. So I had a little bit under a month to prepare for it. A lot of people take a few months out of their time, but like I said, at our school, it's not unheard of. It's definitely more common to take it during the summer, but a lot of people like to take this test during that 2-week winter break. It's a 3-week winter break. It's definitely a grind, but I think it's a lot more worth it just because you're not sacrificing your entire summer. And also, if you do, for some reason, not do too hot on it, you always have the summer to retake this test. You have 3 tries to take this test, so that was something that I really liked. That was really important to me. But yeah, one thing that was really helpful to me though was I took a lot of the courses that were going to be on the DAT right before I started studying for it. So since I took it my winter break of sophomore year, I just got out of taking physiology and anatomy. And a lot of the science section on the DAT is from physiology. So that information was still kind of fresh in my head because I literally just took a physiology final like 3 days before I started studying for the real test. But it was definitely a grind. I'd be in the library every day. I tried staying at school for the beginning of winter break just by myself so I could really focus on the test. But then I started going crazy, you need to be around people just to talk and stuff. So that wasn't really helpful for me. I ended up going home and just going to the library every day. It was really stressful, really tiring time, but the DAT is a very crammable test. It's honestly just up to you how you like to study. I'm fine with being able to condense things into short amounts of time. So it was fine for me.
Thank you for that. Did you do research in undergrad?
So yes, I did do research in undergrad. I started my first semester sophomore year, and I went all the way until the end. My research was a doctor. His name's Dr. Vieira. What we did was we worked with black widow spiders. So that's one misconception too. Your research doesn't have to be directly correlated to dentistry. As long as you can get research or find one that's actually interesting to you, I say go for it. So yeah, my research was with black widow spiders. We were analyzing kind of just like the different silks that they would make. So whenever spiders come down from ceilings or stuff like that, they have this silk called dragline silk. And what's cool about that is that its properties are really strong, and they're almost built kind of like steel in terms of elasticity and strength. So what my job was I would put these spiders under a microscope and we would do microdissections on them, trying to isolate a bunch of different glands. Then we would take them to other researchers in the lab, make a bunch of different like solutions and digests for them, and kind of analyze the makeup of these proteins and just running them through different analyses that you study in genetics, that you study in proteomics, and kind of getting a feel, a deeper understanding of what makes this silk. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience. The one good thing about it, like I said, is that I performed microdissection on it. So that was pretty helpful in my dental application in terms of manual dexterity. You know, I'm working with tools in a really small surface. But yeah, I was involved in research.
That's amazing. So how did you connect with the professor you performed research with?
So I actually casted a wide net when I was applying, when I was reaching out to professors, just because I know that research is really hard to do, really hard to get, I mean. But I was also in a professional fraternity at this time. And one of the people in the fraternity, she actually volunteered, or she actually does research with Dr. Vera as well. So when I joined, she kind of introduced me to him. I said, oh, like, this is Ethan. I think he'd be a really good fit for the lab. And I want to say that really helped me get a spot in the lab. So just having those connections as well is something that's really helpful. But I connected with him by formally emailing him first. Different schools have directories on different professors, and they kind of talk about the work that they do. So my professor had a website where he talked about his publications, the different work that they do as well. I kind of read up on that. And when I was emailing him, I made it clear that I've done my work ahead of time, that I know what I'm getting myself into. This is something that genuinely interests me. So I made sure to incorporate that in my email as well. And I feel like that's really good, because if you keep it really general, really vague, you know, that email could go to any research professor, and that doesn't look too good. They want to see that, you know, they're not wasting one spot on you, that you know what you're doing, and that you'll be like a valuable asset to their lab. So just sending that email and doing your research ahead of time is something that's really important.
Do you have a specific study habit that you used for the DAT or any other classes you took in undergrad?
So for the DAT, one study habit that I found to be helpful was kind of planning out my day ahead of time. You know, I had a small number of days compared to other pre-dental students. So what I wanted to do was make sure that I was being the most efficient when I could be. So I would try to, instead of really focusing on one task at a time, you know, so like finishing bio first and moving on to OChem, then it's Gen Chem, I want to spread myself out pretty thin. So what I did was I did a little bit each day of everything. So I'd write down on my schedule like around an hour and a half of this, finish these videos today, things like that. Just making sure that I was getting exposure to all aspects of the DAT every night, or every day as well. That was really helpful at the very end, because when I took practice tests, you know, I had a pretty solid foundation, I want to say. In regard to undergrad, one thing that was pretty helpful for me was studying with other people. You know, it's a lot, you take a lot of the same classes with a lot of your classmates, especially in this pre-dental program. It's a really small class, so you know almost everybody there. Just having them study with you is something that I found to be super helpful. A lot of science courses is about memorization and repetition as well. So using things like Quizlet, like Anki, or just rewriting your notes, something that doesn't make sense to you, I would just write it out over and over again until it stuck. That's something that I found to be pretty helpful. It's also pretty helpful in dental school right now. I just had an anatomy histology quiz, and I just used the same way I studied in undergrad, and it helped me out pretty well.
Thank you for this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking of specializing?
So I'm not opposed to the idea yet. Obviously, I've considered it a little bit. I've shadowed a periodontist as well as an orthodontist. Both of the fields are really cool to me, but I feel like shadowing is very different than actually getting to do hands-on work in it. So I won't be able to do that until we start rotations this year. So until then, I don't want to say for certain that, oh, I 100% want to specialize, but it's an option that that I want to keep with me, I guess. One thing about Dugoni, about UOP, is that they're known for producing really great general dentists. But because of that, it's essentially a little bit harder to specialize just because they teach you what you need to know for general dentistry. If you want to specialize, you kind of have to do a little bit more work on your own on the outside. But there are definitely faculty here that can help you out with that as well. So as of right now, I'm not entirely closed off to it, but I'm also not like 100% set on it because obviously you have to be top of your class, have impressive extracurriculars, things like that. And dental school is really tough. So we'll see.
So how fast paced is dental school?
Um, it's honestly pretty fast paced. The material itself, in regard to lectures, I would say is about the same or maybe even slightly easier than it is in undergrad. Just because, well, for one thing, UOP undergrad was a semester system, whereas dental school is different from school to school, but my dental school is a quarter system. So it's a 10-week long quarter each time. So that transition for me, at least from semester to quarter, was pretty difficult just because I'm used to having, a few weeks to study for a test. But whereas in dental school, um, you have a test. We have a test and slash quiz every Monday and Friday. So that's one thing. But you also have within that smaller quizzes too, different assessments. So it's pretty fast paced. And just being in class, I guess, the whole day can be pretty draining as well. It's just the sheer amount of material that you're being exposed to, and then having to go apply that in the lab as well. Um, it's it's definitely a lot of work. I obviously I'm only on week 3. I know it's going to get a lot harder from here on out, but just from what I've experienced so far, it definitely is a lot of work.
So I know you mentioned that it's only been 3 weeks, but overall, how was D1? How's D1, and are you having fun?
I am having a lot of fun. It's actually one good thing, I guess, is that I don't mind as much is that we're in dental school now, so we're taking courses that are actually very relevant to dentistry, and that will help us in our careers. Whereas, in undergrad or even in like high school and things like that, you're taking GEs, you're taking random courses, I guess that don't really have a direct correlation in dentistry. So if you're not interested in it, it's honestly you're just doing those courses just because you have to do them in order to graduate. So the fact that I'm able to get to do classes here that I actually find interesting makes kind of studying and doing work not as dreadful. And being in the sim lab, it's a completely new experience, drilling on teeth and waxing teeth up as well. It's a new experience. It's kind of fun. Not when they grade it though, because they grade pretty difficult, but just being able to do that work is definitely more enjoyable. And in terms of like the social aspect, I think it's a great time as well. A lot of dental students live by a work hard, play hard mentality. So it's really nice. It's a really good balance, I would say.
What do you do to de-stress from school?
Um, so things that I like to do right now are so we're in SF. There's lots of good food around here. So it's really expensive, but I eat out quite a bit. Even just walking around the city is pretty cool. There's just something new every day you see. So it's really interesting. And Friday nights, that's kind of the time where all the D1s or all the dental students in general take time to just relax. So whether it's going out or just hanging in each other's apartment talking, we have a rooftop up here in my apartment too. A lot of us get up there pretty often and just sit there and hang out to kind of de-stress throughout the week. I really like photography as well. Haven't been able to do that or go hiking. Haven't been able to do that as often just because the workload is piling up. Especially on weekends, you want to catch up when you can, but it's also important to take time to yourself. So there's some of the things that I like to do to de-stress. I don't have a car here either, so it's not as easy as it was back home to be able to just drive and just do things I wanted to do. But just being around, there's a lot of dental students in my apartment building, so we all like to do stuff together. So that's how I personally de-stress.
Sounds really fun.
Mhm.
If you could change anything from your pre-dental years, what would it be?
If I could change anything, I want to say maybe it's my. Hmm, I want to say maybe honestly the whole thing about AP credits and just trying harder, I guess. It still is possible, but it definitely made my time in undergrad a little bit more work than everyone else. But just really giving it your all and stuff. I'm the type of person where if I do pretty badly, this isn't really a good thing. If I do badly on a test, I'll really let it get to me. And I kind of wish I wasn't like that. Just really kind of taking that failure, I guess, and turning it into like a learning lesson is something that I wish I did more of. But other than that, I feel like there's nothing that I really want to change in my pre-dental years. I feel like I did everything that I wanted to do. So yeah, it's really what you make out of it, I guess.
And any last minute advice for the pre-dents?
Mm, I want to say in regard to maybe like your application, do things that genuinely interest you. I know a lot of people that only do things because they think it'll look really good on their application. Um, while it is true, while your application is very important and there are certain experiences that do pretty well, I think taking time for yourself and actually finding work that you enjoy doing as opposed to work that you like feel like you have to do um, makes your application a lot stronger, especially when you have to talk about it. It really shows through. So for me, I was involved in a lot of dental work as well, um, because obviously you do need that for your application. But I'm personally really into writing as well as just like those types of work. So I actually served as a teacher's assistant for my English course. That's pretty non-traditional, I want to say. A lot of dental students are really just focused on kind of that dentistry aspect, but that was something that genuinely interested me. So I asked my teacher if I could TA for her, and she said yes. And it was a really rewarding experience. I learned a lot from that. So kind of just making sure that you're doing stuff that you genuinely have interest in is something that I find to be pretty important. And also, don't burn out, I guess, in your pre-dental years, just because you do have a long road ahead of you still. Even though it is very important to get into dental school, obviously it's not the end of the world if you don't get in on your first try or anything like that. A lot of my classmates are reapplicants, and we're all in the same spot now. So it's kind of just a different journey for everyone. I would say that don't let school consume your life. It is very important, but it's not the only thing. And just being able to find that balance will help you go a lot farther in the long run. So that's what I find to be pretty helpful.
Thank you so much, Ethan. So that's all the
Mhm.
questions we have for today. So again, thank you for joining us and your
Having
time.
me. Thank you.
And thank you so much for